Welcome to session 4 of Motivating Reluctant Learners. And in this session, we're going to examine some of the most common reasons that students seem to resist our best efforts. And a lot of these have to deal with students' internal barriers to investing in classrooms. So I want to begin by talking about why students resist investing. I'm going to use a story. So suppose I have a car for sale and you're hoping that I'll buy it. And as the prospective buyer, I'm going to ask lots of different questions. Do I really need this car? Do I want this car? Do I want your car? Can I afford your car? Am I going to enjoy driving this car? Do I trust that you're going to give me a fair deal? And all these questions run through my head before I decide to actually lay down my hard-earned teacher money. And the same kind of dilemma exists in the classroom every single day. We offer a curriculum and with it, opportunities to learn. And our students consider our offers and then decide whether it's worth their investment or not. And anytime a student chooses to engage in the classroom, that student has made a value judgment and decided that engaging will provide something of value, either now or down the line. And if students can't see the value in what we're asking them to do, they often won't invest. But likewise, if students don't value what we offer them, not just our curriculum, but also our teaching styles, our strategies, our rules, our daily procedures, they will resist our efforts to help them learn. And if students don't value the currencies that schools in general offers them, then they're going to disengage from our school atmosphere altogether. So when we don't start where our students are, or we don't spend enough time seeking out the root causes of our students' resistance, then we tend to jump ahead and try and fix the problem, which often means working to convince students that they need to do their work, or looking for ways to make the work more attractive to students. But more often than not, this tends to be a frustrating path because it involves lots of effort on our part for very little gain. So we're going to try not to understand why our students resist engaging. And if we don't stop and try and understand that, we're never going to be able to build consistent motivation. So what we're going to talk about in this session is 3 primary reasons that students resist learning. And all 3 have to do with value. It's either the fear of failure, they don't see the value in putting forth the effort and the investment requires. It's a lack of relevance, they don't see the value in the content themselves, or it's a lack of trust. They don't see the value in us as their teachers. So I'm going to start by talking about that first root cause, the fear of failure. Classroom investment is always something of a gamble for students because there's no guarantee, for example, that hard work will translate into academic success, that paying attention during a lesson will lead to instant understanding, or that careful reading of the assigned novel will lead to a personal illumination or even enjoyment. And the negative feelings and repercussions some students associate with failure can make investment seem like an even worse bet. Students who disengage because of fear of failure are not a uniform lot, though. Some have a history of failure, and the idea of further failure can be so upsetting that they sometimes won't even attempt an assignment, even if they already have the different currencies they need to be successful in that assignment. And it's the same way that many of us might have a decent poker hand, but we'd be inclined to fold as the stakes get higher. Other students fear failure because they can't see how they can acquire the currencies they need to invest. But if we ask seems out of reach in a classroom and failure feels inevitable, there are lots of students who would rather not even try at all. And maybe you've seen this in class yourself. Even students who do not have a history of failure may develop a fear of failure, especially if they have breezed through earlier grades and suddenly face a more rigorous coursework that requires increased effort. They may begin to shut down, afraid that if they try, everyone will find out that they're not as smart as they seemed. Kind of goes back to what we talked about last week in what Carol Dweck talked about, that fixed mindset, right? The thing we forget about this type of disengagement is that it's relatively healthy coping behavior, right? Rather than stay in a state of frustration and hopelessness and expend needless energy pursuing this unattainable goal, students who disengage conserve their energy and they use it to pursue different, more attainable goals. And this kind of disengagement is self-protective, right? It's much easier to say, oh, I failed because I didn't try, than I tried my best and I still failed. And we feel that as adults as well. So when we identify this type of resistance as the lack of motivation, right, a failure, oftentimes you're going to be looking for students that do some of these things. They refuse to try, even with supports. They may give up easily. They may turn in incomplete work. They may tend to procrastinate or seek reassurance. These are the students who, the more you push them, the harder they resist. They seem to expect to fail. They're either super conscious about their grades or they pretend that they don't care at all. They may avoid situations that might make them look stupid. They blame failure on things that they can't control. And they focus on how easy or hard a task is. So this is one root cause. The other one I want to talk about is lack of relevance. And we mentioned this a little bit as well last week. For many 21st century learners, all of school, from the way the day is structured to the type of work that they're doing, to the policies and procedures in the classrooms of the school, they seem archaic compared to real life, right? There's this disconnect between school stuff and real life, and that can be even more dramatic for underrepresented students in schools that are dominated by a majority culture. So when students can't see the value in the content in terms of their own lives, then this lack of relevance is the root cause of their disengagement. Generally speaking, we as teachers intuitively understand that disconnect exists between school life and our students' real lives. And most of us try to demolish the relevance of what we ask students, right? We attempt to connect with our students by playing get-to-know-you games, understanding likes and dislikes, interests and hobbies. We seek out professional learning. We learn more about learning styles, or we go to different seminars to figure out more. We try and find connections between our curriculum and their lives. But such efforts can quickly become superficial because it can, for some students, be really difficult to effectively get to know all of the students in our class, especially when our class sizes seem to get larger and larger, or to make a personal connection with them fast enough or deep enough to help each student find a way to access their curriculum. So can, a PD session or a seminar or an article really give us an understanding of our students' experience or their culture or their wants out of school? Probably not. And for some students, this lack of relevance will lead to boredom. So sitting in class and learning in ways that are often linear or passive can seem to them just this long, slow trudge when they're used to spending their out-of-school hours engaging in multiple tasks at once, or activities, or sports, or gaming. All of these provide, constant stimulation, or escalating challenge, or immediate gratification. If you think of social media and a lot of video games. And if they cannot see the relevance of what they're learning or how they're going to be asked to learn, sometimes it simply will not interest them and they will fail to invest, or they'll become unmotivated. And another more sneaky form of disengagement due to lack of relevance arises when students, especially those who are used to getting instant gratification, choose not to invest in a classroom because doing so requires delaying gratification. So telling a third grader that he should work really hard on an assignment because what he's learning will pay off in high school is not only developmentally inappropriate, it's just probably wrong, right? Imagine if I told you that don't eat that donut in your hand because eating it will significantly affect your health when you're 80. How much weight is that actually going to carry in your decision to indulge in that delicious donut? So if students cannot expect a specific and immediate return on their investment, many won't see the value in putting forth the effort and they will disengage or become unmotivated. So let's talk about what this looks like. When you're trying to figure out which of your disengaged students may be resisting investment due to a lack of relevance, look for these different behaviors. They may turn in incomplete or shoddy work. They complain that the assignment is too easy or boring. They ask, will this be on the test? Or they may doodle or daydream. They may look for shortcuts. They may seem not to care about their own learning. They may not make connections between what the work that they're being asked to do in class is and ultimate success. And they focus a whole lot more on the grade rather than the learning. They may rush through assignments and all that too. This brings us to our very last root cause for motivation, which is lack of trust. Sometimes students are waiting to see whether you invest in them before choosing to invest in you. And this is especially true if students feel like you don't value the currencies that they bring into the classroom. And it's, frustrating to continually work hard to help students only to have them resist your best efforts. And as teachers, sometimes it's easy just to give up. But that's exactly what many of these resistant learners are hoping that you're going to do. They know that if they wait you out and exhaust your efforts, you will leave them alone. And often these students are withholding their currencies in your classroom because they don't trust you to help them use their currencies to meet their needs. And it's not that they don't want to invest in the classroom. They don't want to invest in you. They don't value you. They don't believe that you can or will help them to be successful, and don't think that you care enough about them as individuals to make that investment worthwhile. So, when trying to figure out if any of your disengaged students may be resisting investment because they don't trust you to help them be successful, look for some of these behaviors. So they're oppositional, defiant, or angry. They may do things to intentionally annoy you. They may take your comments about their performance personally. They may blame you for their poor grades. They may refuse to follow classroom rules and procedures, and they may not access the supports that you have in place already. So these may be some of the reasons why students resist investing in your classroom. But this week in our reading, we're going to read about creating a culture of learning, confidence, and hope. And we're going to have some questions attached to that reading. So even though we covered maybe why and what to look for, in our reading, we're going to look for some ways to address that by creating confidence and hope. So we have 3 questions this week. Question number 1 has to do with your reading. Think of a class when you were a student that you started out not liking, but wound up liking a whole lot. And what did that teacher do that helped change your attitude? And you can think about your own educational experience, or you can think about examples from you being an adult learner. What did that teacher do to help change your attitude? If you felt like you were disengaged for one of these 3 reasons, what did that teacher do? Question number 2, I want you to think of a student who seems to give up easily that you've had in class, or won't participate because they fear failure. And I want you to use what you came across in your reading to answer the question, how can you guarantee at least one successful outcome from this student every day for an entire week? Question number 3, what kind of supports do you appreciate from others when you are faced with difficult or challenging tasks? Sometimes it is helpful to put ourselves in the place of learner to see what we would want in those situations. So unmotivated students might appreciate getting this kind of support if they don't already get it. So we want you to picture yourself supporting at least one student in this way. Next week, we are going to focus on the theory part of asking for and shaping investment. And the application side is our next chapter in our book, which is value, involvement, and influence. Can't wait to see what you come up with and your thoughts and opinions.